Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris the High Guy Jacobs, and today we are taking a look at part 3 in our 7-part deep dive into all of the armaments available in Doomsday Last Survivors. Previously, we've already gone over headgear as well as weapons, and today we're going to take a look at vests. Now, when looking at armaments, again, let's remind ourselves a couple of key things. All of this information is biased and based on you following one simple rule: choosing a lane and sticking to it. Remember, this is a pay-to-win game, folks, which means that the more money you put in, the more capabilities you technically have and the more options you have available. But if you are like the majority of players and you either spend absolutely nothing on this game or you spend a restricted budget like I do, you want to be as efficient as you can in order to allow you to play as hard as you can and still not have to dump as much as these whales. Okay? So remember, this information is biased. I would prefer you not to have to spend money in this game, but because it is pay to win, I'm going to try to help you out do it the best, okay? Now, what does that mean? When I say pick a lane and stay in it, there are 3 types of troops, like we've spoken about. You've got riders, ranged, and infantry. They all do their own little things. But what you want to do is choose one avenue of troops and hyper-focus those troops. This account that we're looking at right now, this is my alternate account. It is a rider account. All of my equipment, all of my armaments, all of my heroes are all the ones that I focused on are riders. Okay? So everything that I do on this account focuses everything towards riders. Everything I do on my infantry account focuses everything on infantry, and it's going to be the same, hopefully, where you play as well. But that being said, let's jump into it. Let's take a look at these vest frags that we have, these vest options that you have to choose from. We'll go through all 15 of them that we have, and we'll make it very clear so that you won't have to get confused when thinking about which ones to build, which ones to focus, and obviously which attributes to hone as well, okay? So first and foremost, inside the vest, we've got the Viper chest rig. This is for infantry, providing infantry squad block and infantry squad defense. Then you have your reinforced armor, providing infantry squad block and reducing basic attack damage. And then finally, infantry squad block and overall squad HP. Now, when you're looking at what these do, you want to ask yourself what these attributes benefit. For example, the Viper chest rig is benefiting only infantry squads, so typically if you're an infantry main or if all you have is infantry squads, you're going to be leaning more towards this one. Or putting this on someone like a Dut who benefits from leading only infantry squads. The reinforced armor, if you find you're being absolutely crushed by your basic attack damage, especially with some of these new basic attack damage heroes that are out there, this might be the one that you want to lean forward to in that sense. If you find that your troops are just not, they just don't last a long time, they're not survivable enough, they need a little bit more HP, the anti-blast armor is where you want to go. Okay? Now we look at riders, it's going to be very much the same. The studded jacket provides rider block as well as rider defense. The bonded windbreaker provides squad block and basic attack damage taken reduction. And then the frenzied windbreaker provides that squad HP and that squad block. So if you're specifically in your riders, or you use someone like Bella, for example, who also has benefits for leading just riders, you might lead towards this one. Not saying you can't put the Frenzied Windbreaker on it as well if you want that squad HP. Riders sometimes can feel like they might be lacking in HP, so having that Frenzied Windbreaker is a great alternative to the Studded Jacket. They both do fairly well. This one just adds more defense, this one adds more HP. Very simple. Next, you look at ranged. You've got the camo ghillie suit, bringing squad block and squad defense. Ranged squad block and ranged squad defense, pardon me. You've got the stealth ghillie suit, bringing squad block, ranged squad block, and basic attack damage taken reduction. And then the special ghillie suit, bringing ranged squad block and squad HP. So again, just like we've just gone over on these other two, the process and equations and the whole situation basically comes down to the same thing. If you need your range to have a little bit more defense, you go with the camo ghillie suit. I find that the range is lacking on HP, so pumping them with HP is not bad either. And then obviously, if you feel that you're getting attacked or having that damage dealt from your basic attacks, you can go ahead and reduce it there as well. Okay. Now, if we look at our leaders, guess what? It's going to be the exact same, except for the benefit here is that they benefit all squads. So squad block and squad defense, doesn't matter what troops they're leading. Squad block basic attack damage taken reduced. And then squad block and skill damage taken by troops. Okay, so that all of a sudden is a different calculation there as well to reduce that skill damage taken. Okay. So with these ones here, I think the benefit of these ones is they're typically going to go on your heroes like Victor Blackwood or Bianca, right? Bianca Drake. And the cool thing about these ones is that they're already providing all those buffs to all the troops. So especially if you're leading multiple troop types or large rallies with multiple troop types, you're going to be able to benefit all of the troops on the inside. Lastly, when we're dealing with the overall, these ones are obviously leaning towards your zombie kill EXP, as well as your squad load, as well as squad HP. But remember, this squad block and squad HP are only good for overall heroes. And if we take a quick look here, let's just actually take a look. Let's see if we can actually see which ones are, if there are any overall good heroes. Ranged overall, what? Maxine, Sarah Vandermeer, Martin. I still have yet to find one we would actually lead with. Overall, there's nope. Leader. Yeah, there's going to be no heroes that you're actually going to use overall stuff on. Besides your gatherers. So truth be told, any of those armaments that you're looking at here, like this one you can demolish right away. This one you can demolish right away. This one is the only one that I would keep so that you could put on your gatherers. Right? Now, that brings up a really important question. And that question is, how do you know when to, like I'll give you an example. You see these devices, right? How do you know when to make one device as strong as you can, and how do you know when to keep them so you can kind of split them up? Well, here's kind of the way that I think about it. If you're going to be using like multiples of the same one at a time, so for example, I have 4 farmers out, which means that I want them each to have that additional buff. So I'm going to start with 4 and then level up 1 individually at a time until I can get them all eventually up to 5. Could I use all of these and get one up to, 3 or 4 stars now? Yes, but then I'm losing out the benefit of having it on the 4 other marches that you have. When you're looking at something like your vest frags and things like that, if you have multiple troops, it's okay to have multiple copies of it if you're working on a couple, but truth is, unless you're looking at the ones that you use for gathering, almost all the other ones, in my opinion, it's better to like hyper focus until you have them all the way up, because in reality, a lot of times you can be marching with 1 march at a time, 2 marches at a time, maybe 3 if you're using 3 different types of troops, or if you've got a lot of infantry or a lot of troops in general. But having one really strong line, like I've tried to say before and tried to get to, having one really strong line is really going to be what makes or breaks you as a player. You can have 3 somewhat good lines and you're going to get sent home every time, but if you have one that's at least good, your other 2 will tank damage or take damage. You can sacrifice them while your one line is doing as much as it can, and you'll find that you'll end up being more efficient that way. Even if you're, sending troops to rallies, joining garrisons, things like that to help out, a lot of that times you're taking advantage of other people's heroes anyways. So having one good line that you can use yourself, at least in my opinion, is more beneficial. Okay? But that takes care of the elite fragments. Funny enough, when we go to the legendaries, they're very much the same way. The only difference is we have those original stocks, or those original stats are doubled. Okay? So the Viper chest rig comes in with a basic squad block at 24 and a squad defense of 1.8. Both infantry squads, remember, specific to infantry. And then you have the reinforced armor giving you that basic squad block, the infantry squad block, pardon me, and then the basic attack damage taken is reduced by 1.8%. So both of those numbers are doubled in comparison to their elite counterparts. Very much the same way as it is with the riders here, the studded jacket versus the bonded windbreaker. Okay, studded jacket is is block and defense for your rider squads, and then block and basic attack damage reduction as well. Same with your ranged. It's going to be very much the same thing. They are exactly the same except for the stats. So once you know the one, you know them all. Okay, so basic squad block for your ranged squads for block and defense, and then block and basic damage taken on the ghillie suit. Of course, you'll remember that there is no third option here. That third option is locked behind the superb fragments, which we'll talk about and show you as well. Again, squad block, squad defense, and then squad block and basic attack damage taken. Again, here, you can dismantle this one. It's poo-poo buckets. Don't need it. And then use this one just for your squad load, right? Squad load, 7.2% actually makes it pretty good, so you can bring less farms. You can bring less engines, which, if you think about it, is important. If your load is really high, that means that you don't have to bring a lot of trucks. So if you do get hunted, if your trucks do get hunted, you're not losing as much and getting sent to the hospital. I know it's kind of basic common knowledge, but I know a lot of people who don't put armaments on their gatherers, and I think that's a huge mistake. It's a huge benefit, especially if you're getting an additional 10, 15, 20% speed and 7, 10, 12% load. You definitely want to take advantage of those as much as you can, okay? Then we get to look at the superb vest fragments. First and foremost, you've got the anti-blast armor. Not only is this giving you infantry squad block and skill damage taken by your troops at minus 1.2%, but it's also giving you squad HP, which, of course, in my opinion, is what infantry needs. So this has added that skill damage taken by the troop negation at 1.2%, which is an entirely additional stat, which you can absolutely take advantage of. Okay? For riders, you're getting the same thing. Rider squad block, skill damage taken by your troops is less, and your squad HP goes up, which is perfect, because this is, again, what riders need a lot of. They definitely need more HP. Same with your ranged, which, subsequently enough, there it is. Ranged squad block, skill damage taken by your troops, and squad HP. Okay? Go figure, it'll be the same for the gentleman's coats for your overall leaders, or your leaders, pardon me. 22 block, 1.2% reduction on your skill damage taken, and a 1.7% squad HP. And then this one here, you can just go ahead and dismantle anytime you get it. Enjoy the free fragments to go use on something else. Because, truth be told, zombie kill EXP, I've said this before, but killing zombies isn't necessarily, it's not the fastest way to level up your heroes. Obviously, hero boxes and chests and stuff are, which you earn by doing hive minds and zombies and the rest. So, you're not necessarily going to get the zombie kill EXP bonuses very often, and once it's already stacked, when you have like Russell and Martin already naturally doing it, you don't necessarily need to focus on it. And if you're a free-to-play player, you're more likely wanting to take those armament fragments and put them towards things that you can actually use. Okay, so again, get rid of this one. Dismantle. Use the fragments where you want. Remember, guys, remember, folks, these what are they called? These superb fragments. Okay, these superb armaments also come with a rare honing attribute that may appear in the 5th slot. So not only do they get 3 here, and they start with 2 as soon as you get it to 1 star, but they also provide, let's take a look right here. Let's look at this one. They also provide a capability to unlock this one here in the 5th slot. So basically, they provide the capability to add like a Thorns, return some damage. Whenever they take skill damage, they end up returning a little bit of damage on their end. So having that on, say, 5 or 6 or 7, 5, let's say you have it on 5 or 6, pardon me, attributes, 6 armaments. I mean, that's an additional, 78, almost 8,000 damage just for taking skills damage. So that's enough to really turn a fight. So these superb ones are actually pretty metal. But of course, they're either expensive to purchase, they take a hell of a lot of grinding because you have to win not win, but you have to get a lot of points in Island Raid, Archipelago Raid, Genesis War, all that kind of stuff, right? They're lead points for, lead rewards for a lot of those events. Or now, if you look at the arena, right, in the arena of Doom, there are now rewards here as well, but you have to be in the Glorious Monarch and the Glorious Sovereign in order to get them, right? So once you understand how those are expensive, especially to maintain and earn, you'll have a little bit more respect when you end up getting them. You'll have a little bit more excitement when you end up randomly pulling them, okay? But that's what it comes down to for the armaments themselves. The next question is, what kind of attributes do we want to put on these armaments? Well, if we look at these chest pieces, for example, let's go ahead and take a look at the vests, which is what we're working on. Okay. Once we look at these vests, we start to understand that you get the first two up front, which is the first two that they come with, and then obviously you get to unlock them as you want. All right, as you level them up. But when you click manage and you click hone, it'll bring you to this screen where you have the capability of using your common or advanced honing chips to hone out those specific attributes. But remember, there's a couple of key things you need to think about. First off, all of those hones are going to come anywhere from this list. They can come in any valuation. Okay? And it's entirely random. So this is, again, the most headache part of this entire game that any player will tell you. Honing armaments, preparing armaments, all that kind of stuff, because it's like the worst kind of lottery ever, because the payout for a lot of the times is not worth what you like. It sometimes takes a heck of a lot of honing chips. Sometimes you get lucky, and sometimes it takes a heck of a lot of honing chips just to get an extra 0.02 or 0.3% on a stat. So they becomes really, really frustrating. But all those honed attributes are here. So what I suggest every player always does, okay, go through this list and ask yourself, what is that going to do for me? Now, yes, that involves you knowing a little bit of how the calculations go, but as we've been discussing them, right, there are certain ones that happen first. For example, the infantry squad attack and defense, or the squad attack and defense in general, those ones are typically calculated early in the equation. So changing those doesn't have as much influence, okay? So, just a prime example, if you were to get lucky and get a 5% infantry squad attack buff, and you were to get lucky and get a 5% or a 65 infantry squad lethality, that infantry squad lethality 65 would lead to more damage overall than the 5% infantry squad attack. So lethality is better than squad attack, just like block is better than defense. But of course, they still hold their place. If, for example, all of your stats are going towards lethality and block, and you have no defense, well then having a little bit of defense or adding some defense is going to be more beneficial than adding a little bit more block, because you've already got a ton. You see what I'm saying? So it does involve having a little bit of balance, but understanding where those calculations lie. Okay? So lethality and block we've gone over. When you're talking about rally basic attack damage and garrison basic attack damage, all those calculations happen pretty much at the same calculation of when the basic attack damage happens, which is, again, near the front. So, near the front of the calculation. So, when you're talking about these ones here, obviously, you're having that 6%, up to 6% is great. But, again, they're very specific, because you'll only have those triggered when you're either rallying or under garrison itself. Okay? Same with your rally attack and garrison squad attack, things like that. Rally skill damage, garrison squad skill damage. Those are only triggered while you're either rallying or garrisoning. So if you're making something that's specific to, let's say you're making a piece of armor that's specific to Thunder, or you're making an armor that's specific to, Chasey, who's a defense, like a garrison rider, you might have those garrison abilities on there instead. Especially if that's where you're going to be specifically using them. But the only problem I have with those is that they become very specific. So if I'm using Thunder in and he ends up walking in a line in the field, well, he's not getting any of those armament bonuses if they're specific to garrison. So you just have to be careful on, where you put those armaments, okay? Overall squad and attack and defense, we've already talked about. Same with squad lethality and block. Those ones are calculated near the end of the equation, so those ones will have more impact. What you will notice, though, is that your lethality has a higher value if it's specific. So infantry squad lethality goes 7 to 65, whereas just straight squad lethality goes 6 to 60. So basically that just means that, you know, in a situation, if you're building something for, say, a Dut or Bella, who really like to benefit from leading specific troops, you might end up getting better stats and better values if you start pushing for these ones instead. Now, does that mean that if you have a squad lethality at 60, that you're going to change that one? Probably not. You're probably not going to trade that one just to try to hunt for a 65 rider, unless you're a super whale that just does not care. Probably not. Okay. The last ones we're dealing with here, oil gathering, steel, food, wood gathering. These are obviously, you can hone these onto your gathering abilities or your gathering armaments. But again, remember, because of how much things cost, typically your armaments aren't going to get honed much for your gatherers, unless you're really, really, really struggling, like you've got your other ones prepped, right? So chances are these ones are going to get avoided. You probably won't hone these very often, and if you do, you'll probably get rid of them. Unless you're like me and then get an oil gathering 20 on a pair of zombie killing boots and then just use those boots to farm oil. You might do that as well, because that makes sense. Again, damage dealt to zombies and zombie kill XP, in my opinion, are totally moot. You get to a point, you know, when you get tier 5, tier 6 troops, you know, when armaments really matter, you're not struggling to kill zombies. So you might not necessarily need this. The only time zombies are ever a real problem is when you're talking about Archipelago Red, when you have to kill like chainsaw zombies or, you know, like the armored scavengers and stuff like that. But typically in those situations, you're running around in a group, so they'll be there to help you out as well. Squad load is great for farming, but again, it's like oil and gather. It's like the rest of the gathering speeds. You're probably not going to put it on there. If you're lucky to get it, awesome. But you're probably not going to search for it unless you got tons and tons and tons of your honing chips. And then squad travel speed. Now, squad travel speed, in my opinion, is fantastic, especially when you put it on heroes that benefit from it, or if you're specifically trying to make something to do for hunting. So on my infantry account, for example, I have a Dut and Miyamoto, and I have a couple of squad travel speed buffs on her armaments, which makes her actually faster than my riders. So it gives me the benefit of using her to do my hunting instead of having to use my riders who are not as strong. So there's definitely ways to play out so that you can kind of make them work for your benefit. But really what it comes down to is just simply looking at those armaments and then asking yourself, you know, what do you want this armament to do? Because you will have multiple lines. I'm working on my main account right now at creating, you know, 3 main infantry lines. So I'm going to need at least, you know, 18 solid armaments just to be able to stock those lines, right? But that's it, guys. That's it for vests. We've gone through headgear. We've gone through weapons. We've gone through vests now. We are almost halfway through, 3 of 4 down in this deep dive through all the armaments that are currently available. And I'm hoping by this point you're getting more comfortable with them. I'm hoping you're starting to see the patterns. I'm hoping you're starting to understand the complexity, but that's really simple. I know it looks complex. I know there's lots of choices, but the truth is it becomes very simple. And whichever ones you're lucky enough to pull, for the most part, you can make work. You don't necessarily have to dismantle. You know, if I'm a rider, for example, I don't have to just dismantle every other rider one except the one that I'm hunting for. Like, because like I said, I need to have multiples to be able to do several things. But this is where we start to layer on the mechanics and the nuances that this game has. There are so many ways to customize your shelter, customize your account, customize your experience to be the best for you. All you need to ask yourself is, what do you want out of the game? If what you want out of the game is, you know, to farm and build and things like that, then in reality, my opinion doesn't matter. You can do whatever the heck you want. And you're not going to necessarily be wrong unless you get Liam to 60. That's going to be a wrong no matter how you look at it. But if, like I said, if you're like me and you spend a little bit or you don't spend anything at all, then my opinion will have much more value to you. As that's always been my headspace. How can I get the most out of this game by putting in the least? Okay? Now, if you agree with me, go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Go ahead and comment down below what you thought, what you think about armaments in general. If you don't agree with me, hit me up in the comments and tell me why I'm wrong. I welcome it. Okay? If you want to meet me in game, or if you just want to chat, you want to get to know me, go ahead and look for me. Region 474 in the Alliance, GROP. Go ahead and message me if you want to join us. We can chit chat. There's always options. We've always got open availabilities. We participate and are active. So if you are too and you're looking for a new place, hit me up. But other than that, guys, thanks very much for tuning in. Love, peace, chicken grease, and for everybody else, stay lifted.